Hello, Latina professionals, and anyone who's tuning in to either this live or the recording. Welcome to this Latina professionals session. Every Monday, I come on, Sammy Walker Herrera here to speak about public speaking as well as confidence topics. So while you're here, definitely let me know, where are you joining from, the industry you're in, and what you're looking to learn today. Where you're joining from, maybe there's some other folks that you can network based on where you're located or where you're from. So for example, I'm currently based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm originally from Texas, specifically McAllen. The industry you're in, so whether you're in marketing, whether you're in energy, whether you're in coaching yourself, really helpful to see who else is here from your similar industry. And of course, what are you looking to learn today? What can we focus on here today? What questions may you ask? And what could be really great topics for future Latina professionals sessions? So definitely introduce yourself. I'm looking forward to getting to know you. Alrighty. Looking forward to seeing everyone's answers as we connect today. And if you're here for the presentation, fantastic. We are focusing on freezing or racing, how to handle stress when speaking up. That is definitely a very common topic, that sense of not only the fear of public speaking before one starts speaking or before someone decides to take on an opportunity to speak, but what do you do when you're in the middle of speaking and you find yourself freezing or you find yourself racing? So very helpful to see where your own stress comes in. And so we'll be talking about that quite a lot in this session. But still, getting everyone in here, getting to hear from folks where you're joining from, the industry that you're in, and what you're looking to learn today. Excellent. Cece, we got Mexico. Norma is in Mexico. Isaac is at University Incarnate Word in Texas. I know that's San Antonio. Lorena's here. Suledis is here. Katrina is here. Fantastic. Continue introducing yourselves, especially if you haven't included yet your industry and what you're looking to learn. But I'm really glad this topic is resonating with y'all. And hopefully you can leave with one or even more strategies on how to handle that sense of stress so that you recognize your power and you recognize that you have more opportunities to speak up than you probably realize. Oh, Dalinda, great to see that you're at South Texas College. Fantastic. I know that we're both from McAllen, so welcome back to the Latina Professionals session. Oh my goodness, so many folks today. All right. Well, I want to make sure as y'all are introducing yourselves, we can get started with the content for today. But before that, I also want to make sure that I introduce myself fully, whether or not this is your 4th session with me here at Latina Professionals, your 10th session in general at Latina Professionals, or the first time you're ever engaging with our content. I welcome you, and I definitely want to introduce myself. So, hey everyone, my name is Sammy Walker Herrera. Let me take this down here. All right. And what I do is I help executive level leaders build their long-term confidence through committed speaking practice, expert feedback, and accountability. Maybe public speaking and building that speaking confidence is something that you've tried out, but you recognized without a buddy or without a coach, it was really hard to do so. Additionally, it sometimes can feel quite a bit emotional. I imagine some folks are here today because they saw handling stress and thinking, oh my gosh, it is so overwhelming for me. It impacts me both physically and how I present my confidence, as well as emotionally and how I view myself as a speaker. Totally normal. And I'm glad that this session can be here for you, whether you're commenting or not, to learn some strategies. So I personally coached over 50 leaders one-on-one to speak confidently in executive meetings, to their superiors, in high stakes interviews, while gaining recognition for their work and actually having fun taking the opportunity to speak at work. Again, at meetings, presentations, and then of course, conferences and invited guest speaking as well. So in these sessions, it really is focused on empowerment. It's not about focusing on the limited mindset, I will never be able to do this. The goal is for you to leave saying, I can do this. And perhaps maybe I just need a little bit more support, but I know that I can do this. So with that, we'll get started with our presentation. And so I want to ask you, and I asked this to folks who attended my last presentation on Monday, which is, do you consider yourself someone who freezes more when you're under stress? Or do you consider yourself someone who your mind and your voice is racing when you're under stress and speaking? Now, it can be very easy. Now, I want you to let me know in the chat, do you consider yourself more freezing or more racing? But with that, I also want to make sure that that's not something that you start defining yourself as. Oh, well, Sammy asked if I race when I speak or if I'm rambling, that means I'm a rambler. And the thing is, you don't have to consider yourself a rambler. That could be a limiting mindset where you decide never to work on your public speaking or never to work on your confidence while speaking up because you feel like, well, I'm just a rambler, so I'll never be able to do it. It's okay to recognize what's your baseline. In some environments, you may freeze a little bit more. In some environments, you may race. And honestly, in some environments, you might not do either, and you might speak super confidently. That's okay too. So it's really in that context of work and really also in the context of making sure that you're not labeling yourself as something and framing yourself as, I can never grow in this area. Again, anytime I host any type of presentation or a talk with folks or work with any of my clients, the goal is for someone to leave recognizing they have a lot more power than they did starting. So definitely, I see a lot of folks here talking about freezing and racing. So we see Yasmin here says both. I feel like both. Lupe says feels more like racing. Okay, Patricia says freezing a bit more. That totally makes sense. Juan Carlos even says voice raising. Okay, there's so many different ways that we handle stress. And sometimes part of that is raising our voice or getting really soft. That's also something that can show some of that nervousness as we go along as well. But thank you so much for showing and sharing what comes more naturally to you. So with that, we'll talk about environments too. So when you notice you're freezing or you notice you're racing, what environments do they tend to be in? Are they more on one-on-one engagements? Are they more in large groups? Is it when something is very high stakes? What are some of those environments where you notice that stress creeping up on you while speaking? Oh, Lydia, right here. I think it depends on the environment. It totally depends on the environment and the context. So let me know when you notice yourself really stressed when speaking, what is that environment? Okay. I also really hope that as you're seeing the comments scroll, or if you're watching the recording and you just see all the comments that are already there, that you recognize that you're not alone. That there are a lot of people who feel both in similar environments, in different environments. So we see even here, Gina, large groups is where more some of that stress comes in. Okay. Nayeli, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, says when talking to higher leadership or talking to superiors, definitely. Resonates right here with large high stake groups as well. Okay. Again, important to know that context as well, because it's very easy when we have a bad speaking moment to say, I'm a bad public speaker, but really discount the other times in our lives when we're speaking very well. If large groups are where you feel a lot more of that stress, it's easier to discount the times when you're speaking to small groups or speaking one-on-one or raised your hand and spoke up in a meeting, to discount those public speaking opportunities because that one large group engagement was very stressful. Yes. I see folks talking about some of that stress and anxiety that comes along too. So let's move on to talking about some of the strategies related to freezing as well as racing, because they're similar, but they're still quite a bit separate. And we can talk about how you can even combine these strategies as well. So when we talk about freezing, snowflake emojis here. And if you love emojis just as much as me, drop your favorite emoji too, so we can have some fun here too. We're not just talking about stress and anxiety. We're trying to have as much fun as possible. So often when someone's freezing while speaking, there are a number of physical signs of that nervousness. And that could be looking like a deer in headlights. That could be having no eye contact with the camera if it's virtual, or no eye contact with the audience if it's an in-person engagement. It could be a lot of blinking. It could be a look of fear. It could be a look of nothing on the face to hide some of those emotions. And I'll tell you, and maybe I don't want to share this link explicitly, but one of the first times I was ever live on YouTube, my face looked like this. And I remember a friend of mine asking me why I looked so angry on that YouTube live about career coaching. And I wasn't angry. I was just so nervous that I didn't want my face to betray any of the stress or nervousness I felt, that I didn't try to show anything at all. And it still came off in a way that looked like I might not have been as interested or happy to be there. So those are some of those physical traits that can happen. Some of the things that can happen mentally is just that sense of, I need to get out of here. I need to get out of here. Let me answer my question quickly. Let me not go into depth, for example. It can also be, oh my gosh, I was just asked a question and now I need to think of the best answer, the right answer, the correct answer, because it's very easy to freeze when we're afraid of judgment. It's very easy to freeze when we're unsure of what will help us sound good and feel like we still belong in the organization that we're speaking to. Anyone relate to those feelings regarding freezing? I know we had some folks who talked about feeling both freezing and racing. And again, some of that freezing, perhaps a bit more in those large group encounters. Okay, well, don't all freeze on me right now. Okay, Beatriz says your mind goes blank. Yeah, so sometimes it's trying to choose between a lot of things and find that best answer. Sometimes it's the mind going blank. Right here, someone on LinkedIn, facial expressions in the audience can be distracting. So really focusing on how we're being perceived, looking at others to get a sense of like perhaps validation in that sense too. Okay, well, let's talk about freezing in the context of having 5 different things to think about, but not speaking up. Like we freeze because we recognize we can't find that right answer. And maybe that pause that we take feels like forever. One of my favorite things to teach clients is the sense of how long a minute is, how long a minute feels, how long 30 seconds feel. Because I work with a lot of people who they perhaps have a 3 to 4 second pause in what they're saying, but they feel like it must have been too long. It must have been a whole minute or 2 minutes of that pause. And so how do we manage that sense of freezing, of not being able to pick something if we have something on the mind? And the way to do that is to commit to one answer. Now, that is the idea of picking the first thing over the best thing. So let's say you were asked a question like, what was your biggest professional achievement? Now, I would say there is no right or wrong answer for that question. It really gets to be what you decide in that moment. And maybe the first thing that comes to your mind, which is winning an honor related to customer service, you recognize, oh my gosh, well, maybe that's not the best answer. What if they judge me for picking that one? What if the thing is, when you're getting started in your speaking journey, one of the most important things to do is to get started speaking. And it is very helpful to be in an environment and to be with people that can be supportive, who are knowing that you are building your speaking capacity. So whether that's in a group of colleagues, peers, an employee resource group, with coaches, that can be really helpful. And I see here, Bianca, yes, I feel like those seconds are hours. Like that sense of silence can be hours. And I will say, for many public speakers, especially those who have been speaking for a while, silence is often a major superpower for folks, being able to handle the silence and use the silence to build emphasis in what they're speaking about. So thank you, Bianca. So with that, if you're freezing and you're recognizing, I just can't choose between all these things, I don't know what the best answer is, I'm judging myself, I don't know what the right answer is. The idea is to pick the first thing that comes to your mind. Still give yourself some time. And this is where if the mind is going blank, that sense of freezing, it's really important to take a couple of deep breaths, to use those couple of seconds, no matter how long they feel, because they're usually not as long as you perceive them to be. And if you need to, re-ask the question or ask for a clarification. So you can build in some more time to regulate your nervous system, build in some more breathing time, and again, pick the first thing that comes to mind. I see Grace asked a fantastic question, so let me put it on here. Let me move this here. Boop, boop, boop. All right, Grace asked, how do we keep going when we forget what to say? Now, usually when we forget what to say, it's related to forgetting what the question was or forgetting what the topic was. What usually helps me when I forget what the next thing I'm going to say is a couple of things. The first one is pausing, which is also silence. So taking a bit more of a pause between the last thing I said and the next thing I'm going to say, so I can breathe a little bit. The next thing would be trying to remember something from the last thing I said. So for example, going back to that one question, what is my biggest professional achievement? If I decided it was related to, again, we'll use the example of winning an award related to customer service. Let's say I started a story talking about what customer service meant to me and one time I helped someone. Okay, maybe now I'm losing where I want to go. What I'll do is I'll mentally go back to that last sentence, pull one of the words there. So perhaps I talk about physically getting the award, and then I talk about where I keep the award, or what else has been something that I've noticed since getting that award. So a lot of it is practicing how to slow down, how to breathe, and just remember something that is recent and relevant than feeling like, oh my gosh, I forgot the question. I forgot what I want to say. So I hope that's helpful for you, Grace. So committing to one answer, that pausing, that silence, that can be very helpful. Now, I also want to make sure that we are talking about racing today. And I saw a lot of people, again, experiencing both in different contexts or just experiencing that sense of racing and what people also call rambling at times. So we got some race cars here to share about that racing. And with that, we want to talk about, again, that physicality and what's going on mentally when we race. So when we are racing, usually times our pacing goes really fast. Oftentimes when we're racing, our hand motions are going really fast. And that's one thing that can be a strong correlation is between how fast we're speaking is how fast our gestures are moving. And one trick or one strategy really that I use with my clients a lot is how do we slow down the gestures and allow the voice to slow down in tandem? It's hard to move super fast like this and still somehow keep a slower pace. And I often hear from folks who are racing that, well, sometimes I don't get the opportunity to speak. And so if I'm given the opportunity to speak, I'm A, excited to speak, but B, I need to make sure I'm putting as much information in what I'm saying, because what if I don't get another opportunity? Or what if everyone needs all this context? So I can't slow down because I have so much information I need to jam pack in one go. And that's a very tempting thing to do, is race super fast and try to jam pack all this information. But if you've ever heard someone who's spoken very fast, you may not be able to process everything that person is saying. It may be, well, technically, yes, I got a lot of content in 30 seconds, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't understand how to process that. And that's another reason why pauses and silences are so important, because they're not just for us as the speaker. They're not just for us to breathe, to regulate our emotions. They're also for the audience. And what they are for the audience is a space to process what has just happened. It's a place for the audience to think, oh, well, I have this clarification question, or, oh, I'm really curious about this next topic, or even, oh, based on what they're saying, let me predict what they're going to say next. And that's actually something that really reinforces learning for folks, is if they're able to have space to process, to reflect, to even possibly predict what that other person's going to say, it's going to help them remember that content, especially if what you say goes against their prediction. It's definitely going to stick in there, right? It's easier for folks to remember the things that they got wrong or things that they didn't have quite they didn't quite have the expectation for. Since it bucked their expectations, they can think, okay, this is easier for me to remember. And so with racing, sometimes it, again, the fast pacing, it might be a flushed face, the super fast voice, even like really, really, really fast, like, or low volume because you're going so fast as well. And what I'm seeing here in the chat, especially, is Gladia here, as well as Darlene, talking about not being alone and that we're all a work in progress of speaking. I have a secret to tell y'all. I don't know who you might share it with, and I think it's okay if you share the secret with folks, but I'm also a work in progress. Even as I'm speaking now, I'm keeping in the back of my mind, okay, am I pausing long enough? Am I including too much information? Am I using a great or a solid pace for speaking? And even in that last sentence, I stumbled on one of my words, but I do believe it's something that's probably not going to impact the way that you're understanding my speaking, and hopefully not how you understand my ability as a speaker. Even now, I have a sense of a structure of what I'm going to speak about, but I'm still framing it based on the last things I said and even the context of your comments. So I hope that's helpful for y'all, because when I think about myself, I didn't see anyone ask, so apologize if you don't care, but between myself seeing myself with freezing or racing was definitely the one I had more trouble with, because I had so much to say, because I was very enthusiastic, because I didn't always have the opportunity to speak, and I just felt like providing as much information as possible was what would be effective. And when I realized it wasn't effective, I had to step back and think, okay, what can I do now? How do I even practice slowing down? What are the strategies for addressing my mind racing so much that I feel like I need to share everything that's in my mind? So let's talk about one of those strategies, which is choose one answer only. And it's kind of similar to the advice regarding freezing. And the thing is, it's very easy if someone asks a question like, let's say, what is the most impactful business book you've read? Now, as someone who reads a lot and really loves books about entrepreneurship, startups, building confidence in the workplace, things like that, I immediately think of multiple books. And it's very tempting to start my answer with, well, there are so many books I can choose. I could choose this book and that book. I can choose the book related to profits. I can choose a book related to imposter syndrome. I can choose a book related to leadership, all those types of things. And the most important thing to do is, if you're asked a question or one topic, is to choose one answer only. It's very tempting to try to end what I'm saying. And that's why I would say this book is my favorite. But also, I have another book. Like, it's important not to add the but. It's not important not to add the and. It's to really focus on the one thing, the one answer. Because if folks do want more context, they'll usually be able to ask it. Or a lot of times, if we're giving a presentation or we do a Q&A, there may be an opportunity to send a follow-up email with even more resources. And think of that impact when you go into a deep dive with one specific resource, that folks get a sense of, wow, like you were able to have the time to demo it, to tell a story about someone using that resource, and then other resources I can be able to check out on my own and engage with you afterward. And so that's something that's really important to recognize, is how do we pick one answer and one answer only? Now, there are some questions that can be a little bit trickier. Some questions that say things like, what are the top 3 values that you live by? Those are technically 3 answers that you can include. So I live by loyalty, I live by relational growth, and I live by a sense of harmony. The way to pick one answer for that question, even though they're technically asking for many answers, is to pick a story that encapsulates all of those. So want to make sure I'm getting the gears rolling in your mind for that. And I see Victoria here is asking, do you think these tips could be good for one-on-ones and interviews? Well, think of all the times you've been asked an interview question that has multiple parts. that says something like, tell me about a time where you were extremely detail oriented and you were able to hit a deadline on time. Those can easily be two separate interview questions. For any people in here who are interviewers, you know that those could easily be two separate interview questions. The way you handle that is you pick one thing. You pick one story in your interview or in your one-on-one that encapsulates both parts of those answers. But it's a bit tricky. I know for some folks who consider themselves recovering ramblers, again, I don't want anyone to label themselves, but if that is a way that you have described yourself in the past, sometimes even telling a story related to the answer might feel like it's rambling. Oh my gosh, am I rambling? Am I speaking too much? And the important thing there is context. And that's why it is important to get feedback from your colleagues, from your peers, from anyone who works above you, from friends and family, and from a coach as well. Because it's hard to get that sense of what's appropriate without that type of social feedback as well. It's a really great question here, Victoria. I want to share a quote with y'all that really stuck out to me as I was building this presentation. And that is, you are not lucky to be here. The world needs your perspective and they are lucky to have you. And the goal of this presentation, again, is whether or not you feel like you freeze more or you ramble more, you are able to address the speaking styles with the strategies here, with other strategies you can learn from me through Latina professionals, through Toastmasters I know is popular, through YouTube, and through possibly working with a coach as well to recognize that instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, I freeze, or oh my gosh, I ramble, I should just not speak at all. That is not what we want to do. We want to make sure that you have more opportunities to speak, but that you feel safe and comfortable with an appropriate amount of challenge so that you can build your skills. Again, you're not lucky to be here. The world needs your perspective and they're lucky to have you. And that's from Antonio Tijerino, who is the president and CEO of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. And I want to thank you all for being here, for so much engagement in the chat, as always, for these Latina Professionals series. I want to leave it open for a couple minutes of more Q&A. You've been fantastic of asking questions as we go along as well. And sometimes when we attend a session like this, we have more questions than answers at times because it opens up this whole world of public speaking and confident speaking at work. And so what I advise you to do is be sure to attend any future Latina professional sessions, whether hosted by myself, from Danny, from Norma. We're here to help you. We're here to really, again, open up that world of questions so you get a sense of what your personal and your professional development can look like. Additionally, if you feel like, hey, a lot of what you said really resonated with me, I relate to your story, I struggle with speaking on the spot, I feel overwhelmed, whether I'm freezing or my thoughts are racing, let's speak soon. That's definitely something that I can support you in a one-on-one, safe, comfortable basis. And additionally, if you are working at an organization where you feel like, hey, my colleagues need to know this. I'm part of an employee resource group. I'm part of a professional development conference. And we feel like these topics really need to be spoken at our company or our organization. Then that's something that I would love to talk to you about as well. Now, the next session I'll be hosting will be Monday at the same time. So 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. And that's going to be owning your presence. That's going to be 3 keys to coming across as an executive leader. And these are keys that a lot of people don't know about. There's percentage breakdown on how much your presence really matters or how much your image really matters. So I want to make sure that you know these so that you can implement these in your work so it's easier to ascend to leadership roles, to become an executive yourself, to earn promotions, to earn raises as well. And definitely join the Latina professionals community. Rafael, who helps lead all 3 Latino, Latina, Latinx professionals, is fantastic. There are a lot of board members, a lot of coaches that you can connect with as well. And if you want to connect with me specifically, you can connect with me at speakyall.com as well as on LinkedIn. But definitely join our community. A big part of that is attending these sessions. That's joining the professional community that will be hosted by Latina professionals as well, because we really care about your growth, where you want to go, and how we can use our expertise to uplift your expertise. So thank you so much, We also can all say good luck to Dr. Laura here since she has an interview today. Glad that you feel so much more prepared, and we're all rooting for you. Alrighty, make sure you include in the comments any excitement that you have, any things that are coming up for you. And if you can think of other topics I can speak about, I'd be more than happy to. I hope you have a fantastic start to your week. I'm so glad that I can connect with y'all so early in the week on Mondays and just continue the conversation as we go along. Take care.